so honored today to moderate this panel on bridging to belonging. And part of the reason why is I'm a mother, and as a human being that depends on clean air, water, and soil, I'm kind of with you all in this moment wrestling with the question of how do I as an individual and how do we as progressive folks rise to the full urgency and potential of the political moment that is right now. And it's the job of social movements to tell us the story of how we've gotten here and connect us to what we need to do about that. And equally important, it's the job of social movements to project out into the future and show us what's possible, show us where we're going together, what are we fighting for? And leaders, our movement leaders, they don't just tell us this story like telling some kind of, bedtime story, a fantasy about that future. They show us what's possible, and they show us that future that we're fighting for by who they are. They embody it through their everyday actions and how they're with. And I mean how they're with me, how they're with you, how they're with their constituencies, how they're with folks that they might term as internal opposition, or how they're with folks that you might term as external opposition. And these three amazing leaders of very significant movements of our time have exemplified a way of being with that expands the notion of we, that expands the notion of belonging to bridge across movements that then in turn makes the we big enough to win. And I think that's something that we wanted to make sure was part of the framing, is that because this panel is about social movements and movement solidarity, we don't talk about expanding the notion of we and expanding belonging as just, a good thing to have everybody at the party, or, we want to make everybody feel good so they're all invited. But it is fundamentally about building power. We want to expand the we, and we want to expand the notion of belonging so that we can build the power that we need to win the world that we want. So that is what we are here to hear from you all today. We are excited to hear from your lived experience with the challenges of building across, and also we just want to exalt and celebrate and learn from your success as well. Awesome. Is that cool? You all want to do that? Wonderful. So we're going to spend the next hour. We're going to start with kind of what's worked. We're going to move into what's difficult. And then we're going to end out on what's possible and what's next. We have Alicia Garza first up. Woo! And although she needs no introduction, obviously, I am going to read you this little paragraph that she sent to us about her amazing self. So Alicia Garza is an Oakland-based organizer, writer, public speaker, and freedom dreamer, who is currently the Special Projects Director for the National Domestic Workers Alliance, the nation's leading voice for dignity and fairness for the millions of domestic workers in the United States. Garza, along with Opal Tometi and Patrisse Cullors, also founded the Black Lives Matter Network. I know we could just stop there, right? A globally recognized organizing project that focuses on combating anti-Black, state-sanctioned violence and the oppression of all Black people. Thank you for your life. Thank you for your beingness, Alicia. So this idea of being with, I feel like there's a few others that kind of exemplify how much you and others kind of in your crew have transformed the conversation. I feel like Black Lives Matter has really spread and lifted up the idea of intersectionality, and you've worked so hard to make space within Black Lives Matter and the movement for Black lives for all kinds of Black folks, you know, so across many different kinds of identities, LGBTQ folks, immigrants, incarcerated, formerly incarcerated, women, youth, you name it, you all have opened up that space, and that's really challenged the traditional Black liberation movement in many ways, and also challenged many other movements, and we thank you for that. You've also challenged activists from other movements to rise to the occasion and be in solidarity with Black Lives Matters. Then on top of that, you've had to defend yourself for supporting the Women's March in January. So we'd really love to hear from you about the process and prospects for building a very inclusive, broad social movement for liberation.
All right. How y'all doing? Is it like the end of the day or something? How y'all doing? I'm like, y'all better lift it up. This is Oakland. So I have a lot to say, but what's on my heart right now, and I'm hoping you can say this with me, is Jordan Edwards.
Jordan Edwards.
Can you say it louder, Jordan Edwards?
Jordan Edwards.
Can you say it even louder, Jordan Edwards?
Jordan Edwards.
So for those of you who don't know, Jordan Edwards is a 15-year-old child who was murdered on Sunday night in Texas by the police. It's a similar story as the story we hear each and every time. A Black person is murdered. Somehow there's a story that's woven about how they were aggressive. In this particular case, the story that the officer told was that the car that Jordan was in was speeding towards him, and so he was afraid for his life and shot into the passenger side of a car that contained Jordan and his brothers, who were leaving a party because they felt like something was about to pop off. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Think something's about to pop off, you're supposed to bounce. Mm-hmm. So they were doing everything that we all hold folks accountable to be doing, which in and of itself is a little bit of an issue. Because for some of us to have empathy or anger or rage at the stealing of Black lives, they have to be doing everything right. They have to be on the honor roll, which Jordan was. They have to never have had anger or aggression in their life. They have to have been doing all the right things for us to say, oh, that's somebody that we should lift up. But what I want to say, and where this kind of leans into what's working and what's not working, is that there's something about these frames that aren't working. There's something about the frame that there are some Black people who are worth fighting for and others who we should just keep quiet about. That's not working. On top of all the other things that aren't working, like police being able to police themselves, like the same stories getting told over and over again of Black people gone wild in front of a helpless police officer, armed with all of the tools of the state that they could possibly have, but certainly their life was in danger. I say all this to say that this question of building power is what needs to work about the process and the prospect of building a movement of movements. Like you, I'm tired of telling the same story over and over again, but I know that what it's going to take to change having to tell these stories in this way is power. Political power, social power, economic power. And we can't just wish for that to happen. We can't just hope that somebody else will get in the streets and make it happen. We can't even just hope that people being in the streets is what is going to build the power that we need so that we don't have to keep telling the same story over and over and over again. So I wanted to start with that. It wasn't what I planned on talking about, but I couldn't not acknowledge that as we're sitting here talking about othering and belonging, a child was murdered. I also want to start off by just acknowledging that we are on Indigenous land. And so we wanted to honor the Ohlone people whose land this is. And I want to talk about how I have spent the better part of my life, my organizing, my activism, as a part of a small but committed core of people who had big dreams about big impact, but in many ways, we lack the tools that we need to be the force that we dream about. We use the same language, and we use a lot of the same terms, and they make sense only to us. You know what I'm saying? You'll be like, intersectionality. I'm like, that's amazing. And I'm glad that Dr. Crenshaw's work is finally getting lifted up after 20-something years of people telling her she was on one. But we also have, as a part of our work, a lot of unspoken norms that keep people out of what they need to be at the center of. If we're not able to get out of our own echo chamber, and if we're not able to get out of our own way, the prospects and process of building movements isn't going to work. We don't have to agree about every little thing. We don't even have to use the same language, and God forbid, we are going to make a lot of mistakes along the way. We're going to hurt each other. We're going to piss each other off. But if we're serious about this prospect of building power, then we have to learn how to weave the different things that we're doing together in a way that can multiply this room by thousands. Because the movement that we need to build is a movement of millions. I'm often faced with the question of how do we align people who don't vote, who can't vote, who don't want to vote, who think that voting is worthless, and say, you belong here. How do we bring together people who will never sit in these rooms? How do we ensure that the movement that we aim to build, that we know it doesn't get contained in our work plans or our strategic plans or our nicely created messages about who we are, who we belong to, who the other is, how do we engage upon the art of building movements, because it is an art. It involves the art of listening and actually hearing what's being said, not what we want people to be saying. And it involves the art of being comfortable with complexity. As a leader in this movement, I'm often tasked with listening and watching not just what people say, but mostly what people do. And I have to figure out a way to keep myself and other people in this movement that we all deserve, even when I don't agree. Even when some of the things that you're saying just make smoke come out of my ears and my eye starts twitching. I have to believe that building broader is a recognition that the majority of people who need this movement also need our support, our open arms. What that means is that I belong only if you belong. So my work, as I see it, is to cultivate the movement that I want, fully understanding that that movement is not yet here. And it's with those eyes and that heart that I work to build the movement that we deserve. We'll talk more during the panel about concrete tools and obstacles on how we do that. Thanks for indulging me.
Thank you so much. Next up, we have Tara Houska. Woo! Also another powerful force that needs no introduction, and I will also read this thing that she texted me just now.
I've been busy.
So Tara, only because the right one wasn't pulled in the website, people, okay? So Tara hails from the Koochiching First Nation. She's a tribal attorney based in Washington, D.C., the National Campaigns Director of the Honor the Earth, and a former advisor on Native American affairs to Bernie Sanders. She advocates on behalf of, I like how you just kept that going.
Listen.
She advocates on behalf of tribal nations at the local and federal levels on a range of issues impacting Indigenous peoples. She recently spent over 6 months living and working in North Dakota fighting the Dakota Access Pipeline. Yes, yes. She is a co-founder of Not Your Mascots, a nonprofit committed to educating the public about harms of stereotyping. So thank you for spending the whole day traveling here and also braving, not having a hotel at 1 a.m. in the morning last night. Yes, we love you. We appreciate you.
It's okay, I lived outside. I can handle it.
Oh, God. She was like, don't worry, I've been in camp for like 6 months. So Tara, the movement to stop the Dakota Access Pipeline and the militant actions at Standing Rock have sparked the imagination of people all over the world. It's united over 300 different nations, as well as their leaders in kind of a more long-term alliance to fight the sacrilege of native lands and also the breaking of treaties. Can you tell us a little bit about how these unprecedented alliances have come about and what it means for you when you see just so many people from all walks of life identifying with the Standing Rock struggle?
Sure, I would like to thank Alicia for acknowledging the Ohlone people. That is an incredibly important conversation that we all should be having. Indigenous people have been left out of the conversation for far, far too long.
That's right. That's right.
And that's kind of, what I was thinking about when since leaving camp about a month and a half ago now. It's been a very busy month and a half. It's been, what did this mean? What does this mean to you? And how does this movement still progressing? What does it mean to you? And for me, it kind of is this moment where we're coming out of not being part of the conversation for so long. Mm-hmm. Most people in this country have no idea that Native people are actually most likely to die at the hands of police. Mm-hmm. Less than 2% of the population. This situation in North Dakota of militarized police and Native American people just disappearing in jails, that was happening before Standing Rock happened. Yeah, that was happening before the Dakota Access Pipeline resistance. 1 in 3 Native women are raped in this country. That is a terrifying statistic and one that we should all know and be fully aware of. And on top of that, our jurisdiction's been stripped by the Supreme Court. We are not viewed as equal by the Congress, by President Trump, who says things like, these Indians don't look like Indians to me, they don't look like Indians to other Indians. That is his perspective on indigeneity in 2017. It's one that is very difficult. It is hard for me to have come into North Dakota knowing in South Dakota, there was an entire ring of people, state judge, prosecutors, attorneys, that were holding 60-second hearings and taking Native children away from their families. 11 times more likely to be taken out of home than non-Native children. Because no one really seems to know why, but somehow actually there are a lot more federal dollars tied to a Native child. They're worth more in the system. And it's that kind of, narrative when you look at this. You go to the Dakota Access Pipeline, you see what happens when people resist. You see what happens when the system has failed and a tribe has said, no, do not do this. And a white community said, do not do this. This is dangerous to our drinking water. And they said, oh yeah, we'll move the pipeline, we'll put it next to the Indians. That's what happened. It was rerouted from Bismarck. It was put right next to the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. And you go there, that's their sole drinking water source. It is not a frontline community, it is a sacrifice zone. I think that we as a movement have to hold ourselves accountable and be honest about what we're really saying. It's not frontline communities, these are sacrifice zones. These are sacrifice zones not just in environmental justice movements, it is social justice, it is the killing of brown bodies all over this country and a lack of equality that continues. And now we're seeing an all-out war being waged from every angle. These marches are hard, right? These marches are very difficult to me, just to come out of something where I saw the state and a corporate-controlled state and what it does to its citizens, to then go and stand in a march and hold a sign. I'm like, no, they're not listening. These guys aren't listening. But it's also powerful because we're seeing more people mobilized than ever before. We are seeing a backlash to the electing of a racist bigot, and that's incredible, and people being engaged, people running for office, running for election. It's something I think that when we continue this conversation, and what does this mean? What does this mean to all of us? What does Standing Rock mean to all of us? It means that this is what could happen when you stand against a corporate-controlled state. This is what overt corruption looks like. This is a militarized police force that's macing and beating women and children and using attack dogs on them and water cannons on them in defense of a pipeline. That is a reality. I personally was arrested at Standing Rock. I got put into a dog kennel like an animal with dozens of other women and dozens of other people that were unarmed protesters, and we were characterized as violent, as aggressive, as savage. That's what mascots mean. That's what that translates to. We're not part of the conversation. Instead, we are caricatured by all kinds of people. It's not just white people. It's not just white folks that are doing these things.
That's right.
It is the fact that my race is not a costume.
That's right.
No one's race should be a costume.
That's right.
Ever.
That's right.
Ever. That translates into something like seeing what I saw when I was out there, watching police chase down teenage Indian boys on horses and shooting at them, living out this cowboy and Indian fantasy. That's a reality. It's the fact that the high school there is Custer Elementary, Custer High. They have a mural of General Custer on the wall that the children see every single day. You look at our school system. You're from a very young age. You learn that the Indians died out. The Indians aren't here anymore. You don't learn about treaty rights. You don't learn about the existing communities around us, and we should all be holding ourselves accountable on every level for every community. It doesn't matter if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter if you're Native American, it doesn't matter if you're Black, it doesn't matter whatever your demographic happens to be, we are all part of this together. And we can't truly progress unless we stand together. This thing at Standing Rock that happened, it was water. Water is life, Minnie Wachoni. That became a phrase that so many used because it was an all-out war of corporations versus the people. Our right to survival. That's what we were fighting for. 17 million people living along Missouri River, and here's this little tribe standing up and getting thousands of people and then millions of people, and social media controlling this and creating a whole narrative that the mainstream wouldn't cover. So I think Standing Rock showed me that, one, we're now part of this conversation, and that's awesome. We should have been for a long time. We have a lot further to go, but we also have a lot of power. An incredible amount of power. People ask, what are we doing now? You were bulldozed, you were arrested, you were pushed off by the federal government, by the state government. We've now focused on divestment, heavily focusing on the banks that have been funding the Dakota Access Pipeline. And they don't seem to listen to morality, but they listen to money. We've been very, very successful with that. 90 million people, individuals going to the banks, pulling out from Wells Fargo. Almost $5 billion cities canceling. $5 billion. I got to go straight from camp over to a divestment delegation over to Norway with indigenous women and sit in a room with executives that have been in oil and gas for all of these years, and they're looking at us across the table from us, looking at us like, oh my gosh, they're not in the streets, they're like in the meeting with us. That's power, and I think that's where we all need to move together.
Awesome.
Now we have Zahra Billoo. So how many of you all were inspired by the protests of the Muslim ban at the airports? Raise your hand. How many of you all were there? Woo! All right, so one of the people you have to thank for that amazing work. She's a civil rights attorney and the executive director of the San Francisco Bay Area chapter of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CAIR. Most recently, Zahra spoke at the Women's March on Washington and sued Donald Trump to challenge his Muslim ban executive orders. When she's not doing that, she's frequently facilitating trainings and workshops as part of CARE's grassroots efforts to empower the American Muslim community and build bridges with allies on civil rights issues. So thank you for your work, Zahra. Woohoo! So, Arabs and Muslims have been the target of hate crimes and oppression from the US government for many years, just as the constituencies of all of the movements that are up here on stage. And it was escalated during 9/11 and definitely escalated right after this new administration. Can you talk about the process that CARE and other organizations are undertaking to bring people together from various countries to fight back against Islamophobia? And also talk about the alliances you've been able to build through the recent work around the Muslim ban with other non-Arab, non-Muslim communities.
Sure. So thank you for having me. Thank you all for being here. It's inspiring to follow three women doing really great work, and it's not often that we get to be on all women panels. So I'm excited. I'm appreciative of the organizers. I identify as a daughter of immigrants, born and raised in North America, having vacationed across North America because that's where my aunts and uncles and grandparents lived. But I also remember having my headscarf pulled off when I was 10 years old in public school, and learning at a very young age what bullying was, what a hate crime was, and what my school's responsibility was towards my family to ensure that I would feel safe. I actually didn't talk about it for 20 years. I told people that it was really easy to wear a headscarf in public school. I think that was how I coped with it, is I blocked it out. I said it didn't happen. My tenure as a civil rights attorney is mostly under the Obama administration. So while I believe it is true that anti-Muslim sentiment increased post 9/11 and has increased again recently, it didn't go away under the Obama administration. It was just sugar-coated. We celebrated the Arab Spring. As Americans, we were excited to see democracy flourish in the Middle East. But we glossed over the fact that many of those dictators are funded by our tax dollars.
Yep.
Yes.
And most people don't know that hundreds of American Muslims were visited by the FBI through a Department of Justice led by an Obama appointee and asked about their involvement in protests in support of the Arab Spring. Oh, you're excited that democracy is coming to Egypt and you went to a protest? If you look like me, the cost of that is that the FBI showed up at your door to ask you what you think about religion and politics. I remember the call that I got from an American Muslim who I knew, whose American citizen relative was killed by a US drone abroad. Let that sit with you for a second. A US citizen killed by a drone, dispatched by the Obama administration without an opportunity to defend themselves in court. We didn't talk about that. This was the deporter-in-chief who surveilled, killed, entrapped, everything imaginable did to our communities. He hosted 8 Ramadan and Eid celebrations. In year 7, while he was feeding American Muslims fancy foods and saying he cared about the Muslim community, he was also force-feeding, hunger-striking prisoners in Guantanamo. Much of what the Trump administration will do and has been doing is a continuation of what the Obama administration did. In the 10 days following the election, we documented over 100 hate crimes targeting Muslims. The Southern Poverty Law Center documented over 700 hate crimes targeting various communities. At which I want to pause and say that when we think of the Muslim community, it's important that we not just think of people who look like me. US citizens who dress this way, who've been here for over 30 years, who are able-bodied, who are from a certain country. The Muslim community is one of the most diverse communities in the world. We include LGBT Muslims, undocumented Muslims, indigenous Muslims, Mexican-American Muslims, Black Muslims, the list goes on. And so when we're thinking of Muslim issues, we default to people who look like me. but know that we care about and are impacted by so many of the other issues that are discussed at this conference and will be discussed on this panel. Conversation that came up in planning for this panel was, some of you are familiar with Muslim Ban 1 and then Muslim Ban 2, right? So first 10 days after the election, it's hate crimes, hate incidents. I mean, what would we expect when the Breitbart founders and writers are advising the Trump administration? What he has done is bring to the center fringe groups that even old school GOP wouldn't let in, right? People who were too extreme for the GOP are now in the White House wearing their stupid Make America Great Again hats. As a side note, I realize I've never seen one of those in the Bay Area, and I hope I never do. Hopefully, the Trump supporters here are at least embarrassed about their support for racism, bigotry, and homophobia. But it's one thing to say that they empowered racists and bigots to come out of their homes and commit hate crimes. It's another to realize that they were enacting policies. That beginning January 20th, there are people all over DC who think they can run our lives and we won't resist. Who think that they can take their racism and put it into laws and we won't resist. Not a new phenomenon, but definitely a moment where we're seeing them be more bold, which forces us to think about how much bolder can we be. What does it mean to give meaningfully when it comes to our time, money, and putting our bodies on the line? What does it mean to truly live lives of resistance? And so thinking about the Muslim bans, there's one, then there's two. Both of those are getting smacked around in court right now. What's not getting talked about is this stupid iPad ban that comes after those. And what we were thinking about as we were planning for this conference is when people think of the Muslim bans, they think of people who look like me. But the iPad ban actually prohibits people from carrying on devices larger than a cell phone from any direct flights originating in certain Muslim-majority countries and coming to the United States. So from Istanbul, Cairo, and a dozen other airports, if you're flying directly into the United States, no iPads or tablets for you. No one talks about the impact on autistic individuals from things like that. And so we know that even when we're having conversations about being intersectional and inclusive and overlapping in our identities, not all of the voices that need to be at the table are at the table. And so when I think about this question of who are we building with and how are we building, I think of autistic individuals impacted by the iPad ban. I think of LGBT individuals impacted by the Pulse attacks, where we saw the right wing all of a sudden come out and want to be friends with the LGBT community. It's not about access to restrooms, they say, except that's where people are dying. It's about how the Muslims hate the LGBT. And yet LGBT leaders said, we're not going to let the right wing use the tragedy that happened at Pulse to further Islamophobia. It's about everybody understanding that ICE agents who target undocumented individuals are sharing information and equipment with OPD, SFPD, and other police departments who are killing unarmed black men, women, and children, who are then sharing information with FBI agents who are sending informants into our mosques. They are out organizing us when it comes to money, equipment, information, and solidarity. And so our moment is now. And I gain hope from stages and audiences that look like this, that say, we get it. We see the connections. We're having these conversations, and we are going to work on out-organizing them because we love each other and our shared liberation more than they hate us.
Thank you. That was such a great segue. So you all kind of framed your work, and a lot of challenges came up in your remarks. In this next round, could you dig more into what are the specific tools or things that you've seen work in terms of building solidarity?
Where do you want to start? Here?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that I think are helpful. And we can start with this idea of intersectionality. Because again, I think it's something that gets thrown around a lot, and now it's being defanged. So now people are using intersectionality to say, well, we all have identities, which is like kind of not the point. It's like really not the point. The biggest and most important and most impactful practice that I've seen in building relationship and building solidarity within and between movements has to do with seeing people as they are, not as you want them to be, not as you want to shape them, but instead how they are, and really figuring out how can we be here together, knowing that we don't have to be the same. There's something about this country that attempts to samify us as a pathway to freedom, when in reality, what makes us free are the contributions that each of us make, and they're not the same. They're just not. I spent 10 years building a grassroots organization in San Francisco called People Organized to Win Employment Rights. And we built relationship and solidarity between Black American folks who were living in Bayview Hunters Point, a community that does not exist on tourist maps even still, and who were fighting the corporate-driven gentrification of their communities, as well as the corporate-driven environmental poisoning of their communities. And we were building bridges between those communities and Latino immigrant communities. And a lot of the frameworks that folks would use would be to talk about how similar we were. We should be down with each other because we all bleed red. And it was like, cool, but I don't experience that way. Well, we should just be down with each other because we're people of color in the United States. Cool, but I don't experience that way. And then when things would come up in our organization, so people would say things like, I mean, why don't the Black folks just like work? I mean, I just see people like kicking it, and y'all fought this really great fight, and now I think it's just y'all are lazy. And we would be like, shh, don't say that, shh, don't say that, right? And then similarly, from Black folks, we would hear things like, well, you know, they're taking our jobs, they'll work for free. And that's literally what's happening. And we would be like, shh, don't say that, right? And so we would try to do this covering over and say, no, we're all the same, we're all struggling, as a way to build relationship, but actually what we were doing was negating people's experiences. So there was a lot of truth in the things that people were saying about each other, but the falsehood was who's to blame. So the truth was, there are a lot of Black folks who are unemployed. That is the truth. We're not lazy. We've been displaced from the economy in many different ways. If we keep telling people that their experience of what they're seeing is not true, then folks don't feel like this is the place for them. They're performing as opposed to embodying, and that's not what we want. Similarly, when folks would say things like, well, Latinos are taking our jobs, and we would be like, don't say that, don't say that. Well, the reality is, different communities are being displaced in favor of other communities that are being exploited in new ways. That's true. And so if we can talk about those things and the complexity of those things, but keep in mind who's to blame and who's responsible, those bonds that get forged between people, between communities, are actually real. And they last through pressure, because there's tons of pressure to continue to think that we're against each other and we're all fighting for some scraps, as opposed to there's a lot of resources for everybody. So for me, that practice of being honest about the fact that we are not all impacted by these systems in the same way, that we are not all having the same experience, is okay to do, as long as we're incredibly clear about who's creating these experiences for us, and what do they get out of it, and what do we lose? And can we be committed to one another enough to fight who's responsible, rather than fighting those of us who are impacted, but have very little power to enact the policies and the practices that are tearing our communities apart? So that's something that I feel like is a model and a strategy that's working.
Awesome, thank you.
Same question.
Yeah, just feel free to jump in. This is more the conversation part.
Cool. So one of the cool things about this incredible resistance camp that was formed at Standing Rock was that at one point it was 10,000 people all living and working together. And you can imagine that creates a lot of little mini communities, and it creates a lot of fighting, and it creates a lot of different very tense situations, and a whole range of people that come from all walks of life. Native people are, less than 2% of the population. Unfortunately, the genocidal policies of the United States of America were very, very successful. But we are growing, and we are very young, so that's a positive. But that means that people are also walking in that situation, typically with a lot of ignorance, complete misunderstanding of who we are as people, and a whole set of expectations that maybe aren't really what they really are. People that are, this is what not to do. I saw a woman one time, there was an indigenous woman who had locked herself to a piece of equipment, and she was locked to this piece of equipment, and then this young woman starts hula hooping next to her. And we just looked at her like, girl, no, no, what are you thinking? No. And she's like, well, I'm just expressing myself. I'm like, that is a human being that is risking her life at this point and is going to be arrested. Do not do this, take this somewhere else. Cultural, sensitivity. But at the same time, I think, there was also a lot of growth and listening that happened. Just from people, as she said, meeting them where they are, understanding that you're working against a whole construct of people that think, how come you guys are still living on reservations? Why are you guys still poor? Do you guys drink all the time? Are you alcoholics by birth? Or all these really bad stereotypes that are very, very real. And stereotypes that I encountered even working on the Hill. People that would say things like, man, you guys are attorneys now? I'm like, we live in houses and everything. It's crazy. 2017, right? We live in houses, and I also did live in a teepee, but that was, I should be able to do both. I should be able to live in both worlds and have that be acceptable.
That's right.
And I think there's something that's really powerful that comes out of all listening to one another and recognizing that, we have unifying issues of, in this case, it's water, right? It's survival. It's the 7th generation. It is an issue that's not specific to one group. The issue of our children is unifying. We all want our children to have a future. We all want our children to have good, clean water and air to breathe and, equality and equal choices, equal opportunities. We want those things for our kids. Everyone wants that. There's this Ojibwe story that actually talks about not just indigenous people. It's called the 7th Fire story. And it says that right now we're in the time of the 7th fire, and we have a choice. We can choose the path of greed and destruction, or we can choose the path of green and brotherhood for us all. And if that 8th fire is lit, then a new people will emerge. And so we're in that right now. We're in that crossroads right now, making these decisions, and we're making them together. We should not be fighting one another for scraps. It's not okay. All these issues matter, and when we're together, we are so much stronger. This resistance that happened over this last year was so powerful because of all the different people that brought so much to the table from different walks of life. I met people that knew how to make locking devices, and I met people who brought amazing food. People that brought songs and brought, conflict management, all these different skills. So I think, it's really, really important to listen to each other and to just be respectful and understanding and kind of, maybe give people a little bit of a leeway sometimes, but don't hula hoop next to someone that's risking their life. It's a bad idea.
So I would add briefly, 1, agree with everything that's been said. 2, naming that I mostly work in South Asian and Arab communities. So I'm entrenched in what from the outside look like very homogenous communities. And for many of the people I work with, it feels like we're always putting out a fire. We're always under siege. We're always looking over our shoulders. And I know that that's not unique to the communities I work with. But that poses this special challenge of well, then how do I get out and go to protest this other issue? Or how do I show up for this other group when I'm afraid for my own safety, right? And so for me, one of the other ways that we push back or we build a bigger sense of belonging, a bigger sense of we, is to talk about it. if I'm doing a Know Your Rights presentation about what to do when the FBI visits your home and how you act if you think you're under surveillance, and I don't mention the fact that the war on terror policies that target Muslim communities were born in the war on drugs policies that targeted Black and brown communities of many faiths, then I'm not having a complete conversation. I remember the pushback I got from a Palestinian activist when we opposed SB 1070 in Arizona. And he was like, you can't jump on every liberal policy. You can't just jump on every liberal movement. Like, why is this your issue? And it was like, it's my issue because the liberation of people in Arizona who are being targeted by the police matters. It is the correct thing that should matter. It's not about what I get in return. It's that my faith, my morality, my sense of being pushes me to care. And let's be real. If they can do it in Arizona, they can do it elsewhere.
That's right.
And so pushing those conversations sometimes in slow and gentle ways to ensure that impacted communities see the connections is, for me, one critical way in which we broaden who we is, whose liberation we care about, and how we create a better sense of belonging for all of us.
Can you give a specific example of, you talk about the gentle pushing, like what are some examples of how you do that?
I think one of the things that was said was we go to people where they are, right? Like, and I'll use the fact that I'm an American Muslim woman, oftentimes also operating in predominantly male spaces. I've gone into spaces where I have to say, hey, I'm not going to fight the misogyny here in this moment because I can advance civil rights and femininity and like women's rights if I go about it slowly. So, oh, you want to put me in a back room? Okay, we're going to have the Know Your Rights conversation in the back room. And you're going to see the value in the work. You're going to benefit from the services. And the next time I show up, the conversation won't be in the back room. There's a mosque in the Bay Area that I absolutely adore. And the first time I went in, my colleagues and I did a Know Your Rights presentation from upstairs to a predominantly male audience, which was downstairs. And our translator was downstairs. So imagine doing a Know Your Rights presentation on a two-way microphone to an audience downstairs with the translator downstairs. Yeah, compare that to this speaking experience. And I did it. That's not to say I didn't gently critique it. I didn't look surprised, right? I didn't convey that this was awkward. But I didn't. I didn't walk out of that space. I go back every year now. And now I speak to whoever I want, wherever I want. There was a year that I took a male colleague with me and I said, well, let me respect their space and the cultural norms, and how does that work? And so I sent him forward and I said, I'll stay back. He can say what I'm going to say. He works for me. This is fine. And where we had gotten to in the relationship, because I didn't burn the building down the first time, was they said, it's really great that he's here. We need you to come to the front and also address the crowd, right? And so to see that trajectory, because we were speaking to them without attacking them, because we were listening and respecting what they needed, but still providing services, both advanced my role as a female speaker and leader, and made sure that civil rights weren't lost in the process.
Yep, that's right.
Thank you, that was amazing. So we got a reminder that we've got to meet people where they are, that we need to be more committed to our collective freedom than our, perceived beefs, that we shouldn't gloss over differences, and we need to hold a very clear analysis of who's responsible and who benefits from the different situations that we're in. We got a contribution around really needing to listen to each other, to let everybody bring their skills, whether it's conflict mediation or food, or just seeing everybody contribute their strengths to the whole. And then lastly, talking about connecting the dots between our issues. So as we're doing the political education and the history of our issues, we're connecting it to the other issues. And it sounded like there was a piece around patience and gentleness with each other. That's somewhat, I guess, coming back to this, I'm committed to you over the long term, and what is the way we need to be with each other when we're in that, we're in it for the long haul together. So as we enter into the final stretch, we'd love for you all to project outward into the future. So we're in this seventh fire, and what's possible from here? Where do you see us going next as a movement? Who do we need to be, as individuals and as a collective, to get to the eighth fire? Any order you all want to go to?
You want to start? I started already.
Just to switch it up and make it like a conversation,
Yeah.
not like a classroom.
How about you?
I'll just keep sitting in the middle here. That's good.
So in 2013, we published a report that looked at how much money was being spent on spreading anti-Muslim hate. And what we found was that it was over $200 million in just 5 years. So from 2008 to 2013. I can't even imagine what it was like in 2015 and 2016. One of our partner organizations went further, and they looked at how the organizations that were attacking Muslims were connected to anti-Black activism, anti-LGBT activism, anti-immigrant activism. It's a lot of money and a lot of power being mobilized to attack people that look like this all-female panel. To take away our right to choose, to take away our right to freedom and liberation, to take away our right to move. And when I think of $200 million, like, crap, that's like hella overwhelming. That's a lot of money. But I come to this work personally from a place of faith. And I know that the prophets I believe in, that the communities I celebrate, have never had more money than their oppressors. That the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was an orphan. That the Prophet Jesus was poor, right? That all of these people were poor. And so it wasn't money. It was faith, it was community, it was patience, it was persistence, and it was what I call lifestyles of resistance. Don't mistake this as me praising 45. It is not. But I will say that the silver lining of his election is what feels like a second awakening for many of our communities, for much of America. Go to any protest and ask people how many people are first-time attendees at a protest. There's a lot. And so when I look towards the future, I worry that racism doesn't end when this presidency ends. Neither does classism, bigotry, capitalism, homophobia, or any of the things that we're fighting against. But I'm hopeful for all of the people in this room and their friends and family, the people that turned out to the Women's March, the people that are slowly turning out to support the North Dakota Access Pipeline, resistance to the pipeline, the Black Lives Matter protesters, and others who are saying, we get it. We're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to walk the walk. We're going to put our bodies on the line. And so it's not a 4-year fight. It's much longer than that. But I think that we will win.
Can you, for an expansion, yes. Thank you for your hopefulness. So if there was like a call to action that you would give to the people in this room, like, what are like the 1 to 3 things that you'd be like, this is what we need to do?
So my standard for how we decide if we're doing enough is whether or not it's causing us pain, right? And I use this in fundraising conversations, and I've been saying it because I'm less and less shy about asking for money now, which I'm not about to do, don't worry, right? But it's like, if I give you my scrappy old shoes, but I'm wearing my favorite ones, was that meaningful charity? If I go to a protest and I'm not a little bit worried about getting arrested, and that's assuming that I'm documented and I have a backup plan and I can afford to be arrested in all of the ways that that will impact me. But if I'm not a little bit afraid of putting my body on the line, was it a meaningful engagement in protest to advance our country, right? If I'm not willing to have that hard conversation with the racist in my family or at my workplace, then what did I give up? Like, am I truly acting to advance our country? And so the specific call to action I have is think about what you're doing and then think about how you can do it deeper. So if you give charity to any of the organizations on this stage or anywhere else, can you give $10 more? If you go to a protest once every 6 months, but maybe not the scary protests in Oakland, can you go to a scary protest in Oakland and really put your body on the line for the resistance? if you're having conversations about racism with your friends, but not the people you don't want to agitate, like, can you have that conversation? And so I'm not going to tell you what you do because you know what you can do. Whether that's protesting or donating or showing up, like, that's up to you. Everyone has different skills and skill sets. But what you can do is ask, how do I do it more meaningfully? How do I truly sacrifice to advance what a few others are indeed currently putting their bodies on the line for?
Thank you.
Call to action round two.
Yeah.
If I had I think I already touched on it earlier. If I had a call to action, it would be divest. It would be, if your money's in Wells Fargo, if it's sitting in Citibank, if it's sitting in Chase, pull your money out of the bank. You have agency and you have power. You have money that really matters to these people, right? Like their profit margin matters more than human beings. I saw that firsthand. Their profit margin matters more than people's safety. It matters more than a woman who had to punch a dog off of her breast for being bitten as she was trying to defend the destruction of a sacred site. She was trying to protect the sacred site from being destroyed. That's where we're at. That's a very firsthand view. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to go out there and chain yourself to a pipeline. You don't have to go out there and get thrown into a dog kennel. You don't have to do those things. But there are things you can do. And, most people aren't going to know about the localized struggles that are happening in your community. I also encourage you to look up and just see what's going on around you. What's going on in your community? What's the most important issue to you? And not just looking to the federal level and to like the national issues that have gotten the spotlight, but what's happening around you? Because we're under an administration that is, gutting protections, gutting the agencies meant to protect the citizens across the board. Cutting funding. I just saw this morning that he cut the funding for libraries. I mean, that's, that's a serious thing that's happening. And so it's on us. What's happening in your local community? Are you willing to run for office? Do you know anyone who would be great in office? Can you run for, your city council, your school board, whatever it happens to be? Do you know anyone that maybe wants to do that? I've met with people that say, I actually only think it would be like 5 votes. And I'm like, take your family then and go. Like, feed them dinner. I'm not saying bribe them, but, I would hope they maybe vote for you. If it's that simple and you know that, empower yourself. We do have power. We do have something to contribute. And if you don't want to run for office and you feel disenfranchised, you can disrupt. Disruption is also a technique to be heard. That is taking the streets. That is standing out there in solidarity and risking something, risking potential arrest. That's a hard thing to do, but that means I'm doing this because I believe in it. And I believe in these people's fight, and I believe in this struggle, or whatever it happens to be. So I really encourage you to look around what's going on around you, and to, just that whole conversation of money is such a powerful one. And a side note, I'm going to be, in a week, I'm going to be crashing a shareholders meeting, and that'll be so much fun. And I'll look at them, and they'll look at me, and they'll be like, oh no, it's you, and I'll be like, hi. So they really don't like us messing with their money. Like, that is so powerful. When you mess with their money, and that's your money in the bank, yeah, it might be hard to pull your mortgage out of Wells Fargo, but you can do it, and that's a major contribution.
Ooh, I see they're coming up. They're like, question and answer time. Okay, check this out, though. I got some stuff to say. So first and foremost, now is the time for us to connect and coordinate. Those of you who are in this room know a little bit of something about changing some things. But the trick now is to figure out, how do we aggregate the power that we have? So a movement that is successful needs every single person in this room and all the things that y'all do. Successful movements need cultural workers. Successful movements need policy institutes. Successful movements need grassroots organizations. Successful movements need collectives. Successful movements need folks who are working around media and communications. So each of you in this room is doing some of that work already. But now, how do we come together and actually be in it with each other in a long-term way? So how do we create and weave together the different things that we're doing so that we are bigger than the sum of our parts. That's one big thing we can do, like, right now. Second thing that I think is really important, I have to emphasize again, we have to get these people out. They have to go, which means that we need to replace them with people who are going to do something better and something different. So, how many people here live in Oakland? Oh, yes. Okay, well, y'all. There's lots of things happening here. There are elections coming up. I'm looking for who's running for mayor. I'm looking for who's wanting to run for city council. I'm looking for people who want to run for BART board. Like, legit, we actually need to go from the people who are throwing rocks at the castle, right? And we need those folks too, to being people who are governing. And so, the first step in that, right, is making sure we have a strategy on how to do that. There's lots of people that are thinking about that right now. Folks like Steve Phillips and Amy Allison at PowerPack, my girl Jessica Bird at 3 Point Strategies. I'm working on a project called Black Futures Lab, which is trying to build independent, progressive political power for Black people. Those are some of the things that we need to be doing. And then finally, I just want to reiterate that we can walk and chew gum at the same time. So who we need to be is nimble. We need to be able to talk about the things that we're talking about and make sure that we stop and talk about Jordan Edwards. How many people in this room sent a note out to your staff or to the constituencies that you belong to talk about what's happening with Jordan Edwards? Okay, so by the end of this day, I would like to see many more hands. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. It's not taking away from anything to talk about what's happening right now in our communities and tie that to the mission of our work. That is a way that we can practice being here right now in real time and making sure that we are real assets to the people in our communities.
Thank you. So wow, that hour passed by very quickly. We want to really thank the panelists for their wisdom and, again, their beingness and their work. So to close out, we're going to just humor me here. We're going to do a little like follow the leader activity.
Ooh.
So if you can just rub your hands together. And just call in your ancestors, call in your loved ones, call in your communities, call in your children, call in Jordan Edwards, and so many others that are named and unnamed. You just feel that love filling your hands. Let's just put our hands to each other. And this is not as much, just towards the panelists, but this is us, maybe if you imagine the love rays bouncing on here, and we're a big mirror, and we're bouncing it right back towards you. I just want to repeat after me. Jordan Edwards.
Jordan Edwards.
I love you.
I love you.
I am with you.
I am with you.
Let's get free.
Let's get free.
Jordan Edwards.
Jordan Edwards.
I love you.
I love you.
I am with you.
I am with you.
Let's get free.
Let's get free.
Don't hold back. This is the last time. Jordan Edwards.
Jordan Edwards.
I love you.
I love you.
I am with you.
I am with you.
Let's get free.
Let's get free.
Ashe, amen.
Shame.
Thank you.